How to reach people for referrals?
So
Right.
if you just send somebody a message saying that this is my resume, do you have a role in do you have a role in your company? Nobody will do that. That's the worst thing to do. A lot of people will also say they can't quantify the number. If you can't quantify the number, then you are completely detached from the problem.
This person has taken 500 interviews, reviewed 2000 plus resumes, and had people land promotions and job offers. So, today we will break what recruiters actually look for, the biggest resume mistakes, and how candidates kill their chances without realizing it. Hi, Vic. So, for people who don't know you, can you quickly walk us through your journey and how you ended up reviewing thousands of
And
resumes?
so I come from a tech background. I was a DevOps engineer for most of my career, and then I used to do release management. Now I work in the product side. I sit in between like customer support and R&D, like the products and engineering side of the business. And I'm sort of in a voice of customer function. So about 6, 7 years ago, just around COVID time, somebody like a friend of a friend reached out because he had a very specific need that he was working in Bangalore in Amazon and he wanted to land a job in data analytics in Amsterdam or London in either Booking.com, TransferWise, or he had one more company. So he reached out to me, not so much as a business, like as a career coaching thing, but because I used to do a lot of interviews at work. Like even in my current company, I've done like 500, 600 interviews. I've been on interview panels in my past companies as well. So I've been directly or indirectly involved with a lot of hiring and recruiting and data space, tech support, DevOps, all different kinds of roles. So he reached out trying to figure out how to sort of do that journey. I worked with him for about 6 to 8 months. He ended up moving to Amsterdam, got a visa sponsorship, got a job in TransferWise. Now he works in London in Booking.com. So his journey was good. And then once I made it happen for him, he started sending his friends, his colleagues who were curious on how it worked. But the first 3 to 4 years was mainly word of mouth organic. And then the last 2, 3 years, I started getting enough people reaching out to me. So I started it off as a side thing where I started helping people out, answering questions, trying to clarify things. So it started organically and now it's going that way as well.
Oh, that's great. So, it all started with a
Yes.
friend's resume,
Yes.
right? Yeah. So, at what point did you realize that most resumes fail for same particular reasons?
The main thing I think with most people is they try to write too much without really realizing that the recruiter is only going to spend like initially you when you make an application, especially in today's market, you have at least 200, 300 applicants for a role, if not more. So your funnel, like at the start, you have like 300 resumes, out of which the funnel gets very, very short very quickly. So from 300, you go down to about 5 or 6 resumes. So a recruiter is trying to see from these 300 that I got, which are the 5 or 6 that I need to show to a hiring manager. And they are not going to read through all 300 to find which are those 5 or 6. If they find 5 or 6 good ones, they're going to stop there. This could be in the first five, this could be in 50, 100, 200. So a recruiter is just skimming through resumes, trying to filter them down. And people, like, even with 5 years of experience, sometimes people write 2 page resumes. Like attention span is so low, recruiters have such
Right.
little time. So they're only going to spend maybe 10, 15 seconds looking at your resume in the initial pass. So you have to get to the point. Don't write big story. Don't write big, like, if you have 5 years experience, nobody is interested in the project that you did in college or a committee that you led in college. So people write all sorts of random things where they make it harder for the recruiter to decide if they will be a good fit. And that's what becomes the hurdle. Second thing that a lot of people do is they use beautiful color schemes, they use different color codes, they put their pictures. All of that makes the recruiter's job a lot harder. The ATS trying to parse that much harder. So a plain black and white is what, like if you look at the page three of a newspaper, you don't read it, you just glance through it. If you look at the page one and two, like where there are no ads, that's
Right.
when you're actually reading. So a resume has to follow that same principle. It has to be simple, it has to be easy to read, and something a recruiter can understand in 10 seconds. If they can't answer what you do and why they should interview you in 10 seconds, they will move on. There's no shortage of applicants.
So, Vic, suppose that you have got 100 resumes for a job. Okay. So, how many resumes do you think are actually interview
I
ready?
would say maybe 20%, 20 to 30% are interview, like they are 100% ready. But in some cases, what ends up happening is that even if they're not 100% ready,
The recruiter will do some work. It's not that the resume has to be 100% ready, but the resume has to be short. If the resume is too long, then even if it's interview ready, recruiters don't have the time to read through it. So even if the resume was not ready, but it was 70% there, a recruiter might still give you a chance. But if it is too long, they will just move on. Like the length is sort of the main thing that works against people as much more than anything else.
Okay, so even if you have like 5 years of experience, it's always
So
to go with
general
one page
general
resume,
rule
right?
of thumb is like up to 7 years, one page is enough. 7 to 10 years, maybe one
Hmm.
and a half. If you have more than 10 years of experience, 10 to 15 years or plus, like more than 2 pages, nobody is going to read. And any experience of yours that is older than
Right.
10 years old, nobody is interested. Even if you have 30 years of experience, nobody's. So recruiter is only going to interview and hire you for the past 5 to 7 years. That's all they're really looking for. So you can fit most people's resume is one
Okay.
page, one and a half, 2 page. More than two, you never need it. Like nobody reads it, nobody is interested. So unless you are in a very, very niche field where there is a big shortage of applicants, then you can write a 10-page resume and recruiters will reach out. But for 95, 99% of the people, they will not. So 7 years, one page, 7 to 10, maybe one and a half page, and then 10 plus up to 2 pages. That's it. Nothing more.
Okay. So let's try to do some recruiter reality check. Okay. So when a recruiter opens a resume, what are the first 6 to 10 seconds actually they
So
spend
when the
on?
recruiter starts with your CV, they're looking at your name at the very top. They're trying to understand where you are located. So if a recruiter is hiring for somebody in Bangalore, 9 out of 10 times they're going to prefer candidates who are in Bangalore because scheduling becomes a lot easier, in-person interviews become a lot easier. They don't have to worry about relocation. They don't have to worry about whether you will move with your family because if somebody is married, they have kids, then relocation becomes a lot more challenging. So they're trying to get answers to all of those questions. They need to understand how to contact you. If they should email you your phone number. Where is your LinkedIn profile? Is it easily clickable? If you're a developer, is there a GitHub repo? If you're a data analyst or a data engineer, is there a Tableau profile? So all of that should be available in the first two lines itself. If you have more than say 7 to 10 years of experience, a very short one-line header, like a senior program manager handling multi-million dollar projects, a very short one line just before that, just after your contact details, is quite useful for a recruiter to understand, followed by a career summary, which should be no more than say one and a half paragraph. Again, very clear to the point, highlighting your achievements as opposed to just starting with the chronological order that I started here, went here. That's not what they're interested in. Once you're done with that, regardless of what experience you have, jump straight into the work experience. Like nobody is going to hire you because you wrote team management in your resume. As of like soft skills are not really something that they can just read and say. That has to be further. Like that could be the last section in your resume. Nobody cares. They just need to be there, but they should be in the end, not at the like your first page is your key. Like if you read a newspaper as well, right? You read the first page. If you see an ad, if you see a trailer, the first page is where the most attention is. If they are convinced, then they are going to move on. So all your highlights, all the important bits have to come in the first page. Go with the assumption that they're not going to read the second page. Write it like that. If you do that, you're 90% likely to get a call
Right.
from a recruiter.
Right. Just a second. कुछ भी करूं
ज्यादा
मम्मी को
चिंता
ज्यादा चिंता होती है कि
नाश्ता
भाई
कर
नाश्ता
लो
कर लो बाद
क्या
में कर
इतना
लेना.
जरूरी है जो तुम कर रहे हो हाँ.
Suppose that you see a resume, the candidate is very skilled, but what is one thing that makes you instantly reject that
So
resume?
the key to rejection would be like if a candidate is good, if I think they're a good fit, the only rejection point could be that they're not meeting a criteria that is mandatory for a role. So a lot of people, like when they apply for
Okay.
jobs, they get rejection letters within like 5-10 seconds of applying, within a minute of applying. So it's not that a recruiter has actually seen it.
Right.
In the application, they had a mandatory criteria, and sometimes the mandatory criteria could be very arbitrary. That for a data engineer or a data analyst, they need 7 years of Tableau experience. Like that's a hypothetical example. And then when you fill the application form, they ask you, do you have 7 years of Tableau experience? You may have six and you choose no.
Right.
Everything else is matching. But even without somebody seeing it, because if that is selected as a mandatory thing for the role, you will get rejected regardless of what skills you have. So some kinds of rejections are those. Some rejections are very specific, that companies or teams don't have a big budget, that they can't do relocation, or they can't wait for somebody to relocate, or notice period is a criteria. So a lot of those very tangible things become rigid criteria. Outside of those, if a recruiter has shortlisted a resume, 9 out of 10 times the hiring manager will interview them. They will discuss, so that the recruiter is the main screening gate to decide if you will get the interview call or not. If that has happened, then a hiring manager will not just reject them. So they will give them a fair chance, at least one interview round, unless it's a mandatory thing that they are not meeting.
Right. Sometimes when I try to apply, there are some 5, 6 questions, and suppose that there's a question that you need to have 3+ of years of experience in Power BI, and I have 2 years of experience, so I feel that 2 years of experience, and then they ask on some particular thing like, "Are you currently residing in Bangalore?" I say no, and sometimes I know that I'm not gonna get selected, so I leave
Yeah. So
those
so
form
what I
at there. So
so
should
you have
I?
two,
Yeah,
three things you can do with that. Either you can lie in the application, not something I would recommend, because if it's a mandatory criteria, when they interview you, they will decide. So if that criteria is not matching, that means regardless of what skills you have, they're not interested. But something like the Power BI one is a bit tricky. Say your total work ex is 5 years. You started using Power BI in the last 2 years. So using Power BI for 2 years and 3 years is not very different. And so in questions
right,
like that, if you have 2 years of experience but they need 3 years, I would choose yes there, because your skills are not going to change between 2 and 3 years. It's just a criteria they have defined for the number of years. If you have the skill, like between 3 and 5 years as well, you won't learn that much new stuff. So answering yes when you have 3 years of experience for a 5 year question is okay, but location you can't really do much, because there are other things that will come in. So even if you're not in Bangalore and you choose yes, when they interview you, they will find out. So that is not a direction that will work out in the long term. But skills based ones, yes, like selecting three when you have 2 years, selecting three when you have five, like selecting five when you have 3 years, those are very intangible. They're very arbitrary. So those you shouldn't worry about that much when you apply. Yeah.
okay. So at least try to complete the entire
Yes. Fill
form
it,
and
because
fill it,
regardless,
regardless of
because
whatever the.
once the
Yeah,
recruiter wants to interview, once they reach out, then they don't care about all this. Then they're not going to sit there and verify if you have three
right,
years, 2 years. That's not what they're interested in. That's the initial gate check that they put in, which they want you to pass. That's it. That's it. Because if in the interview you don't demonstrate enough, like say you have 5 years of Power BI experience when they only wanted three, but if you don't answer questions, that doesn't mean they will hire you. So it's just a filtering mechanism. That's pretty
right.
much it. Because number of years is taken as a proxy for skill. That's why they put in that number. That's pretty much it. There's nothing more. There's no more value to it.
Yeah, right. Also, one thing comes that you have 5 years of experience, but the role is asking for 5 years of Python, but you have only 1 year of experience actually working with Python, because on other years you were working on some other
Yeah,
skills, like your most of the work revolved around SQL or
yeah,
Tableau. So it's kind of like not sure that if someone
what
has 5 years of experience, that he has 5 years of particular experience on those skills, and no one can have.
exactly. But one
Right.
to 5 years is a very big gap, and it's a very different thing.
Yeah.
2 to 3 years is very different. 3 to 5 is very different. 1 year in something is generally too
Right.
less to sort of justify. But if you have been working, say, in Python for 2 years consistently, then there is not that much that you will do when you have 5 years of experience. Like some frameworks might change, some libraries might change, some things you use might change, but not that
Right.
different if you've done proper 2 years. Because a lot of people say they have done 2 years of experience, where they use Python just to run a script that they've been using for 2 years because it extracts data. So that's not really 2 years of Python experience as well. So people quantify their experience incorrectly to begin
Right.
with.
So what separates an average resume from one that gets a call
So the
back?
main thing, like as I said earlier, if the resume is very nicely written, like very clearly written in one page, I'm assuming like say 5 years, somebody with, so resume has to be one page, simple black and white, not don't write like your roles and responsibilities, because if I publish a role for a data analyst, I already know what they are going to do. So that's not what I want to read in the resume. I want to read what you did, and I also want to read what outcome it had. So if you built a dashboard as a data analyst, and that meant that you don't get requests every week for a manual report, and that is saving you 1 day every week, that's what I want to read in the resume, that you saved 50 days worth of work in a year by building that dashboard. Or your teams are able to make real time decisions, or you're able to make, like, what is the business problem that you've solved? Building the dashboard is not the problem. Extracting data is not the skill. What does that do? How does it get more revenue? How does it help get more customers? How does it avoid churn? What is that? And a lot of people will also say they can't quantify the number. If you can't quantify the number, then you are completely detached from the problem. So if you're building a dashboard
Right.
that is going to tell you how to prevent customer churn to give insights, and you're telling me you don't know how much churn you prevented, then you didn't really work on that. It's not possible. You will be
Right.
involved, you will know what happened. So
Right. Right.
those numbers will give me a very clear idea that you've not just done the work, you've also worked with other teams. Like, rather than saying I do stakeholder management, I collaborate with other teams, I collaborate with product, these lines will give me clarity on what you do. If you tell me that you are helping with a product
Right.
launch, a feature launch, where you work with the PMM team, where you work with your community forum, where you help them build analytics, you review page loads. So that will give me very good clarity that you have an idea of end-to-end journey of what is happening, as opposed to just saying that you help in feature, like
Right.
helping in feature launches or providing data needs for a feature launch doesn't tell me anything. That is not why you.
So Vic, suppose that someone has some gaps in his resume, and so how they can justify that gap?
So the main thing to do is, like, don't try to hide the gap, because it's not something that you can, like, they make that you can't disappear, like that will go away from your CV. So if you have a gap, there are just make sure that it's called out in the resume. Say for the last 1 year, if you were not working, it could be a health reason, it could be that you were trying to pursue education, you were trying your own startup, you were freelancing. So just mention it. Don't go into like justifying why you have a gap, but just make a one line entry about the fact that you have a gap, that for the past year, in 1 year, you were trying to launch your own company, did not work out, like it did not work out in the end. There was not, it was not a, but try to write it in a way that it, like, the recruiter just reads it and moves on. That say if I quit my job, I started a company, I tried for a year, did not work out, just mention that I tried to launch my company. It took me like for 1 year, we tried to launch the product, could not find a product market fit. So now I'm back looking for a role. It's as simple as that. You don't have to go into lengths of explaining why the product market fit did not, like, that's not what they're interested in. But if you just leave a 1 year gap, then it becomes very confusing for them. And if you have a gap, then
Right.
try and find, and if you think that is becoming a challenge, then try and find somebody who can give you an internship or a role without any pay, just for the sake of having a role where you, even if you're helping them 1 day a week, 2 day a week, that can sort of just, like, you just need to address it one way or another. That's pretty much it. Don't worry about the gap so much. It's just a thing, and you can move. Like, I have a 2 year career gap back in the day, like from 2013, 2014. Doesn't make, like,
Okay.
it did make job search a lot harder back then, but it's not that I didn't land a job in the end. So it's just a matter of how you present it.
Right. Right. Suppose that I have joined one company and there have been some months, like 5 months or 10 months, and I'm applying for another switch. So, how can I present well that, because they are going to ask that why you are switching so
Yeah.
early
So
when it's been not more than a year
so
for
what
you?
you can, and regardless of how many years you are in a company, every time you're asked that question, like why you want to switch or why you want to join a company, you have to use it as an opportunity to say nice things about the other company. So don't say I want to leave because my salary is
Okay.
bad, my work culture is horrible, I don't like it's not about what you don't like. Reframe the answer to, like, I want to join your, you can say, like, I'm in the market for a role, but I'm not, it's not like I'm applying to 20 jobs every day. I'm very selective about what roles I apply to. For your company, I'm interested because of XYZ. That's what you, so don't go into explaining why you want to leave. Just use that opportunity to talk good things about the company where you're applying. If you say good things about a company in that answer, they can't use that as a negative in the interview. It's very simple. So that's pretty much, you don't have to go into a
Right.
lot of detail. a lot of people still try to explain why they want to leave. That's not what you need to do with the answer. And especially if you're, say, if you were trying to apply hypothetically in a company like Zomato or Flipkart, like any of the product companies that are doing well, then
Yeah.
even if you just say that I'm the fact that I'm happy, like my current role is going well, the career progression, everything is fine, but opportunity as companies like Zomato don't come very often. It'll be a big change in my career, a big brand on my CV. So it's not really a question of why I want to leave. It's more about that I want to work at Zomato. That's pretty much it. Like nobody will drill down on that answer. There's nothing to drill down. You've told them good things about them, and that's
Right.
pretty much it. Like you don't need to over explain.
Right. So make your negative their
Exactly. That's
positive.
pretty. All answers have to be like that. Like if they ask you what is your weakness, don't go into explaining what weakness you have. Find an example where it can sound like a positive. Like if when I do interview, like when if I'm asked that question, I answer saying that if somebody will ask me like for an estimate, if I'm given a new project, if I think the project will take 3 months, I usually tell 4 months because I know most projects are never on time. It takes longer. So initially people are not happy with that response, but over time they realize that it's a more realistic answer, and I'm more likely to meet that deadline as opposed to 3 months that will just please them and I'll not meet them. So I'm pushing the friction to the start as opposed to the end. So in all of this, there's no weakness that I've spoken about, but the answer sounds good.
Right.
So you have to move it to a direction where it's a
Right.
conversation, right? It's not really a fact check that is it a weakness or not.
Right.
That's like they want to
Right.
understand, they want to listen to you, and it also showcases how you will handle a difficult stakeholder when you get some negative feedback. How will you turn it around? How
Right.
will you move the discussion forward and not get stuck on a particular point? That's what they're after.
Right, right. That's a great point. Suppose that someone is trying to get a job, how much important it becomes to make yourself visible, like writing on LinkedIn, being active there, writing on X or any other
So,
platform.
if it's just for a job search, writing actively will certainly help. It will certainly help with a lot of things. Even if you're not writing actively, having a very up to date profile, very nicely written profile that's matching with your resume is very, very critical. Like, there's no excuse for not having a good profile. If you write actively, you will automatically get a lot of views on your profile. If you get a lot of views on your profile, the benefit that happen does is that when you start applying for jobs, that same views you can cash in. Recruiters will also come there. And if you're writing actively online, you're engaging with people, you will not shy away from doing cold messaging to people to ask for referrals, to ask for some help, to ask for so it breaks you out of your comfort zone. That's the main benefit it does. So when you're in the market looking for a role, you will be more actively trying to pursue the right people. So that's the benefit you will get because you will be used to people randomly messaging you on LinkedIn. So you won't shy away from messaging somebody. Like that friction
Right,
in your head will go away. But even if you don't do all of that, have a good resume, have a good LinkedIn profile, that will work as well. You don't have to be somebody like me who's posting 3 times a day on LinkedIn. Like that's not necessary. One time a day, one time a week is also fine. Not posting is also fine. But having an up-to-date profile is a must. Like there's no excuse for that. And there's one very critical thing
yeah.
that people forget. Like you and I could apply for the same role, have similar experience, and have resumes written very differently. But when a recruiter is comparing our profiles, they will probably use LinkedIn more than the resume because the structure is same. They know what they're expecting. Comparison becomes a lot easier when they're seeing the exact same flow. So that's why you need to have that available. And a lot of recruiters start searching for candidates through LinkedIn. So having a good profile also helps there. So
Right.
it will help having a good presence, but at least having a good profile is a non-negotiable. Like that you can't do away with.
Right. How to reach people for referrals
So if you
directly.
just send somebody a message saying that this is my resume, do you have a role in do you have a role in your company? Nobody will do that. That's the worst thing to do. The second thing you
Right.
can like one of the best things you can do is TopMate is a very good avenue. So if you want to look for roles in certain companies,
Hmm.
even before you start applying, just spend some money in talking to people on platforms like TopMate in the kind of companies you want to work at. So one, you will get very good at understanding what roles and what skills they are looking for, what kind of so build rapport with people initially before you actually ask for a referral. If you just message somebody out of the blue, they will not really be open because is not just clicking a button to say I'm referring Sudhanshu. If you don't do well in the interview, any future referrals that I send, recruiters will not be very interested in my company. So I have to be very mindful. Like if I refer you, you get hired, I'll get money. That's great. But if I refer you and you really do, if you do badly in the
Right.
interview, next time I'll refer somebody, a recruiter will not interview them. But if I interview you, you do well in the interview, next time recruiters will ask me for referrals. I don't even have to, like, it starts working very differently if you find good candidates. So you have to warm up, you have to do your prep
Right.
work. And when you ask for a referral, you have to tell people why you are a good fit. Find the role, ask questions. If you just send cold messages, people will just ignore them. Nobody cares. Nobody has the time to do you a favor without really getting something in return, without you doing the hard work in why they should refer you.
Okay. That's it. Thanks for all the wonderful
Okay,
advices, Vic.
perfect.
Yeah.